Christmas morning began with the familiar buzz of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was barely 7 a.m. when I saw my son's name, Curtis, on the screen. For a moment, my heart filled with that warmth only a mother can feel, thinking her son was calling to wish her a Merry Christmas. How naive I was. "Good morning, Mom. Laura asked me to send you this for dinner tonight." No Christmas greeting, no, "How are you?" Not even a loving tone, just that sentence, dry as the desert, followed by an image that made the blood in my veins run colder than the winter wind hitting my window. The photo showed a list, written in my daughter-in-law's perfect handwriting. A list that looked like the menu of a five-star restaurant, but was in reality a command. A demand disguised as a Christmas wish. Dishes required for Christmas dinner. Stuffed turkey with walnuts and cranberries, at least 15 pounds. Glazed pork roast with honey and mustard. Smoked salmon with dill.
Spinach-Ricotta Lasagna.
Caesar salad with homemade croutons. Mashed potatoes with European-style butter. Roasted vegetables with fine herbs.
Freshly baked artisan brie.
Homemade cranberry sauce.
Turkey Gravy. Tiramisu für 10 People. Beere Käsekacke.
Bavarian cream. Reserve red wine.
Special Champagne für a Toast.
At the end of this long list, a postscript that pierced me like a dagger. P.S. We hope everything is ready by 7 p.m. My whole family is coming too, my parents and my siblings. So please plan for 18 people. Thanks. 18 people. As if I were a catering service hired for the occasion. As if my 70 years, my arthritis, my high blood pressure, and my tired heart were worth nothing. As if the fact that I was the grandmother, the mother, the matriarch of this family, automatically made me their personal slave. I sat there on the edge of the bed, holding the phone as if it were a venomous snake. Tears began to blur my vision. But they were not tears of sadness, but tears of a rage so deep it consumed me from within. A rage that had been building for years, from being taken for granted and treated as an inexhaustible resource instead of a human being with feelings and limits. I looked at that hellish list again and mentally calculated the cost. The 15-pound turkey would cost at least $90. The smoked salmon another $100. The ingredients for 3 different desserts at least $175 more. And that wasn't counting the wine, champagne, and all the other fresh ingredients Laura so casually demanded. We were talking about more than $700 just for the ingredients, not to mention the hours of labor it would cost me to prepare such a feast. I remembered Laura's words to me just 3 months earlier when I had loaned her $2,500 for the down payment on her new compact car. "Oh, mother-in-law, you are so generous. We will never forget this." Lies. All lies. Wrapped in false smiles and calculated hugs. How many times had I emptied my savings account to help them? How many times had I cancelled my own plans to cater to their whims? Last year, I gave them a trip to Florida they so desperately wanted. 6 months ago, another $1,200 for my grandson's birthday party at that sinfully expensive venue Laura had chosen. And now, this merciless list arrived, as if I were their housekeeper. The phone vibrated again.
Another message from Curtis.
"Mom, Laura says if you need money to buy everything, we can help you later. But please don't disappoint us today. Help me later." As if my money were an eternal loan that never had to be repaid. As if my 70 years of life hadn't taught me to be naive about promises that would never be kept. As if I wouldn't remember the dozens of times before when I had heard the same empty words. Don't disappoint us. As if all previous Christmases had been a disappointment. As if the last 15 years, during which I had prepared Christmas dinner for their family, had been insufficient. As if my unconditional love was something that could be bought with empty promises of repayment. I stood up from the bed on trembling legs, not from age, but from the indignation that flowed through my veins like molten lava. I went into the kitchen, where I had created family memories for decades, where I had taught Curtis to bake cookies at the age of 5, where I had soothed his adolescent heartbreaks with hot chocolate and endless hugs. Now, that same kitchen had become a symbol of my voluntary servitude. The place where I was expected to perform culinary miracles on command, without regard for my time, my money, or my dignity. The place where Laura expected me to transform her list of demands into a real feast, as if I were her personal genie in a bottle. My hands trembled as I held the phone again, reading the merciless list over and over. People who expected a 70-year-old woman to prepare a feast worthy of a luxury hotel. Laura's entire family would come to enjoy the work of my arthritic hands, while she herself would collect all the praise as the perfect daughter-in-law who had organized a beautiful Christmas party. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me like a nostalgic flood. I remembered the first Christmas after Curtis married Laura 15 years ago. I was so excited to have a daughter-in-law. A daughter I had never had. I had dreamed for months of this perfect Christmas dinner that would bring them together as a family. I spent $350 of my savings to buy the best turkey I could find, imported and organic. I spent 3 full days preparing every detail. The chestnut stuffing I had learned from my mother, Ida, the potatoes au gratin with Gruyere cheese, the vanilla cream that was my grandmother's specialty. My hands worked tirelessly, peeling, chopping, kneading, baking. The house smelled of cinnamon and a mother's love. When they arrived that evening, Laura was wearing a beautiful red dress that I knew had cost over $600. She sat at the table like a queen waiting to be served, while I ran back and forth between the kitchen and the dining room, making sure everything was perfect. "It's delicious, mother-in-law," she said with a smile that now seemed calculated.
You cook better than any chef.
Those words filled me with pride back then. I thought I had found my purpose, to be the matriarch who held this family together through food and unconditional love. How blind I was not to realize that I was being judged only by my utility. The next year, the guest list grew. "Mother-in-law, my parents want to come too," Laura said with that honey-sweet voice she used when she needed something. "And my siblings with their spouses. We'll be about 20 people, but you cook so well that I'm sure you don't mind." Of course, I didn't mind. This time I spent $600. I worked for 4 days in a row until my feet swelled up like balloons. Every year the expectations grew, every year I tried harder. Christmas became a competition with myself to surpass the previous dinner. Laura started bringing friends to brag. "Look what my mother-in-law prepares. It's incredible, isn't it? We are so lucky." I smiled proudly while serving 30 people, ignoring the pain in my back and the fatigue that consumed me. But things began to change subtly. The requests became more specific, more demanding. "Mother-in-law, this year you have to make that lasagna that was so good last time, and the salmon too. But make sure it's Atlantic salmon.
We don't like the Pacific, kind."
The suggestions turned into orders, disguised as compliments. Then came the constructive criticism. "The turkey was a little dry, mother-in-law. Next time you could try a different recipe." "Oh, the kids didn't like the mashed potatoes so much, maybe with more butter." Each comment was a stab in the gut, wrapped in gift paper. The most painful moment came 3 years ago when I overheard Laura talking on the phone with her sister while I was washing dishes in the kitchen. "Yeah, of course. We're going to my mother-in-law's for Christmas. It's free and she does all the cooking. We just have to show up and eat. It's like a personal restaurant." She laughed that crystal-clear laugh that once sounded melodic to me. "The best part is, she pays for everything. She never asks us for a cent." Those words bored into my heart like knives. A personal restaurant. That's what I had become to them. Not a beloved mother-in-law, not a second mother, not the loving grandmother of their children, just a provider of free services who worked tirelessly for their comfort. I remembered all the times I had cancelled my own Christmas plans to please them. The trip to Arizona I desperately wanted to take with my sister, Leona, cancelled because "we can't have Christmas without you, mother-in-law." My friend Opal's invitation to spend the holidays at her country house, declined because "the family needs you, Alma." And the expenses, my God, the expenses that had accumulated over the years. Not just the Christmas dinner, but all the little favors Laura asked of me throughout the year. "Mother-in-law, we need help with the kids' school fees." "Mother-in-law, our air conditioning is broken." "Mother-in-law, we want to replace the living room furniture." Always with that smile, always with promises to pay back the money when our financial situation improves. I did the math in my head and realized that in the last 5 years, I had spent over $35,000 on Curtis and Laura alone. $35,000 from my modest pension, from the savings I had accumulated over 40 years as a secretary. Money I could have used to travel, to renovate my house, to have a more comfortable retirement. But what hurt me the most was not the money. It was the lack of respect, the way they had taken me for granted, like the air we breathe or the water that comes from the tap, always available, never appreciated, never thanked. I looked at the phone and that list again.
This time, something different happened inside me.
A small but fierce flame began to glow deep within. A flame that had been waiting for years for the perfect moment to become a fire of dignity and self-respect. I went to the bathroom mirror and looked at myself intently. I saw a 70-year-old woman with wrinkles that told stories of love and sacrifice, with tired eyes that still shone with intelligence. Alma Reed, I said aloud to myself, when was the last time someone asked you what you want for Christmas? The question I asked myself in front of the mirror echoed in my head like a painful refrain. When was the last time someone asked what I wanted for Christmas? The answer was devastating. Never. In the years of Curtis's marriage, no one had considered my wishes, my dreams, my needs for these special days. I returned to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept the monthly bills. I took out the bank statements from the last 3 months and spread them on the table like a detective analyzing evidence of a crime. The numbers didn't lie. In October, I had transferred $800 for my grandchildren's urgent school supplies. In November, $1,200 for Curtis's car repair. In December, $500 for Christmas gifts that Laura wanted to buy, but the budget wasn't enough. $2,500 in just 3 months, almost half of my monthly pension of $2,000. I was practically living on $900 a month to cover my own expenses, medications, food, utilities, clothing. Meanwhile, Laura was buying designer handbags and Curtis was changing his phone every 6 months. I opened the photo album I kept in the kitchen drawer. The first pictures showed a different woman. Me at 55. Beaming with a smile at Curtis's graduation. I was wearing an emerald green dress that I had bought especially for the occasion, and my hair had a modern cut that made me look elegant and sophisticated. Back then, I still allowed myself the luxury of going to the hairdresser every month, buying new clothes, taking care of my appearance. I slowly turned the pages and saw how my image changed over the years. In the photos of the first Christmas parties with Laura, I looked well-groomed, made up, and in carefully chosen outfits. But as the years went by, my appearance became more unkempt, more tired. In the latest Christmas photos, I appear as a shadow in the background, serving food, clearing tables, always working while the others smiled for the camera. In last year's photo, I'm standing next to the oven with a stained apron and a messy ponytail. My hands are holding a heavy tray while everyone else is sitting at the table, toasting with glasses of wine that I had paid for. I'm not even looking at the camera because I was too busy making sure nothing was missing on the table. That picture broke my heart. When had I stopped being the guest of honor in my own home and turned into the housekeeper? When had I accepted that my place at family gatherings was behind the stove instead of at the head of the table? I vividly remembered Christmas 2 years ago when my blood pressure soared due to the stress of preparing dinner for 25 people. I was dizzy. I had a headache, and I asked Laura to at least help me with the desserts. Her answer was like a slap in the face. "Oh, mother-in-law, you know I'm not good at cooking. Besides, everyone likes yours better.
Don't worry.
I'll help with the dishes after dinner." A lie. After dinner, she went straight to the sofa with a glass of wine, while I spent 3 hours washing dishes. I looked in the album for photos of my own childhood Christmases. There was my mother, Ida, sitting at the head of our modest table with a serene smile, while my siblings and I surrounded her with sincere love. She never had to cook for 30 people, never had to spend her savings on the whims of others, never had to beg for respect in her own home. My mother died at 68, exactly my current age. In her last years, we, her children, took turns visiting her, bringing her flowers, asking her what she needed. It would never have occurred to us to send her a list of demands via text. The contrast was so painful that I had to close the album. I looked at the wall clock. It was 9 a.m. If it were any other Christmas, I would already be at the supermarket, pushing a cart full of expensive ingredients and mentally calculating how I could stretch the budget to meet all of Laura's demands. Then I would spend the rest of the day like a slave in my own kitchen, preparing a feast that others would enjoy while I served plate after plate with a forced smile. But something had changed in me. That flame of dignity that had begun to glow was now burning stronger. I picked up the phone again and read Laura's list for the third time. This time, instead of fear, I felt a strange, liberating clarity. I went to my small desk and took a blank sheet of paper. With my best handwriting, I began to write a different list. A list I had wanted to write for years but had never had the courage to put on paper. List of things Alma Reed wants for Christmas. Respect. Consideration. For someone to ask how I am. For someone to care about my feelings. For someone to appreciate my efforts. For someone to treat me as a person, not a free service. A sincere apology for years of exploiting my generosity. A Christmas where I, too, can sit down and enjoy, instead of serving. As I wrote, tears streamed down my cheeks, but they were tears of liberation, not sadness. For the first time in 15 years, I was writing down my needs and giving them the importance they deserved. I folded my list carefully and put it in the pocket of my bathrobe. I felt as if, after years of emotional slavery, I had written my Declaration of Independence. The phone vibrated again. This time it was an audio message from Laura. Her sweet, manipulative voice filled my silent kitchen. "Hello, dear mother-in-law. I hope you've already seen the list Curtis sent you. I know it's a lot, but you are the only one who cooks so deliciously to make the whole family happy. My parents are already looking forward to trying your famous turkey. I've already told them you're the best cook in the world." She took a theatrical pause. "Oh, and please, if you could make the tiramisu without coffee, because my sister doesn't like it, I would be very grateful. You are a treasure, you know."
Atreasure?
That word hit me like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't love that Laura felt for me. It was convenience, comfort, exploitation. True love doesn't come with lists of demands. True love asks before it requests. True love offers help instead of demanding services. I went to my room and opened the closet. Wrapped in tissue paper in the very back was the dress I had bought 3 years ago for my friend Opal's daughter's wedding. It was a beautiful wine-red dress, elegant but comfortable, that made me feel dignified and beautiful. I had only worn it once because I had felt guilty after buying it, spending money on vanities while Curtis and Laura needed so much. I took the dress out and laid it on the bed. I took off my old bathrobe and tried it on in front of the mirror. The fabric draped perfectly over my figure, and the color highlighted my gray eyes. I looked like the woman I had been before I became my daughter-in-law's personal servant. I looked like Alma Reed, not the mother-in-law who cooks for free. I rummaged in my vanity drawer and found the red lipstick I had bought with the dress. I applied it slowly, watching it transform my face. Every gesture was an act of rebellion against the years of self-neglect, against the habit of putting myself at the bottom of the priority list. The phone rang. It was Curtis. This time, I decided to answer. "Hello, Mom. Did you see Laura's message? I hope you don't have a problem with the tiramisu without coffee. You know how picky she is about food." His tone was casual, as if he were asking about the weather. "Curtis," I said, my voice firmer than I had used in years, "I need to ask you something. Do you know how much it costs to prepare a dinner for 18 people? There was an uncomfortable pause. No, Mom, I haven't calculated it, but you've always done it so well." "It's over $700 just for the ingredients, my son. Not counting my time, my effort, my health. Do you know what my pension is?" "Mom, why are you asking me this? If you need money for the food, we told you we'd help you later." I cut him off, just as he had done to me so many times before. "Curtis, in the last 5 years, I have spent over $35,000 helping you too. $35,000 that was meant for my old age, for my medications, for my peace of mind." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, his voice sounded defensive. "Mom, we never forced you to give us money. You always offered to help." Those words were the straw that broke the camel's back. "Offered? When exactly did I offer to become your free housekeeper?" When did I offer to empty my savings to finance your whims? When did I offer to work like a slave in my own kitchen while you sit like royalty at my table? Mom, you're exaggerating. We've always been grateful. Grateful with nice words while you continue to squeeze me like a lemon. Curtis, do you know what day it is? It's Christmas, and the only thing I've received from my family is a list of demands. No hug, no gift, not even a Merry Christmas, Mom, how are you? My son's voice became quiet. Mom, of course we wish you a Merry Christmas. We're just busy getting ready for dinner. The dinner that I will prepare, that I will pay for, that I will serve while you enjoy it. Tell me something, my son. When was the last time you or Laura cooked for me? When was the last time you invited me to dinner at your house without asking me to bring the food? The silence became painfully long. I knew Curtis was processing questions he had never asked himself. Uncomfortable questions that revealed years of selfishness disguised as family tradition. Mom, I don't understand why you're so upset. You've always enjoyed cooking for the family. Enjoyed? Do you think I enjoy working for 12 hours straight so you can come, eat, and leave? Do you think I enjoy spending half my pension on a dinner you take for granted? Do you think I enjoy being treated like service staff in my own home? For the first time in that conversation, I heard uncertainty in his voice. Mom, we don't treat you like service staff. You're part of the family. Part of the family, Curtis? Family members sit at the table together. Family members share the costs. Family members take care of each other. I am the employee who works for free so you can have fun.
I hung up the phone.
My hands weren't shaking from fear, but from the adrenaline that comes from speaking the truth after years of silence. For the first time in 15 years, I had set boundaries. For the first time in decades, I had defended my dignity. I looked at my reflection and saw a different woman, the wine-red dress, the red lipstick, but above all, the look of determination in my eyes. Alma Reed had awakened from her long slumber of compliance and was ready to take her life back. After I hung up, a strange silence filled my house. It was a different silence from the one I had experienced for years. It wasn't the empty silence of loneliness, but the powerful silence of a decision made. I walked with firm steps into the kitchen, feeling the wine-red dress move elegantly around me, reminding me who Alma Reed really was. I opened the pantry and saw all the ingredients I had bought in the last week, hoping to prepare a special Christmas dinner. I had spent $200 on gourmet products, extra virgin olive oil, imported cheeses, expensive spices, cooking wine, all bought in the hope of creating an unforgettable evening for my family. A family that had reduced me to a text message list. I took a large paper bag and began to put all those expensive ingredients inside. If Laura wanted her 5-star restaurant meal, she could go buy it herself. Every product I put in the bag was an act of liberation. The $80 prosciutto, the $30 macadamia nuts, the $40 authentic Parmigiano Reggiano, products my modest pension shouldn't be financing for the whim of a woman who earned double what I did. The phone began to ring persistently. First Curtis, then Laura, then unknown numbers that were surely from her family.
I let it ring.
For the first time in years, I was in control of my own time. I decided when and with whom I would speak. I went to my room and got the small suitcase from my closet that I had used for my last trip 5 years ago. I opened it on the bed and began to carefully fold some of my best clothes. The black dress I wore to my granddaughter's graduation, the silk blouse I had bought for my 65th birthday but never wore because it was too elegant for being at home. The comfortable but beautiful shoes I had saved for a special occasion that never came. As I packed, memories rushed through my mind like a time-lapse film. I remembered my mother, Ida, telling me stories of her own mother-in-law, a formidable woman who never allowed herself to be disrespected. A woman who doesn't respect herself cannot expect respect from others, my mother used to say. How right she was. I thought of my friends from the book club, especially Opal, who had been widowed 3 years ago and was now traveling the world with her husband's pension. Alma, Opal had told me at our last meeting, you have to live for yourself. Your children are grown. They have built their own lives. Now it's your turn. At the time, I thought Opal was exaggerating, that it was selfish to think that way. Now I understood she was the wisest woman I knew. I went back to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept my important documents. I took out my savings passbook and checked it carefully. Despite all the family loans, I still had $6,000 left. Money I had saved for a rainy day but had never dared to spend on myself. Money that should be used for my happiness, not to finance the vacations of others. I took out my old laptop and turned it on. I hadn't used it in months because I was always busy cooking, cleaning, or solving Curtis and Laura's financial problems. I opened my emails and found the message Opal had sent me 2 weeks ago. Alma, dearest, you still have time to join me in Cape May. I found a beautiful hotel right on the ocean. Very affordable. It would only be $700 for a week. Think about it. You need a vacation. $700. Less than what I had spent on my son's last emergency, less than what tonight's Christmas dinner would have cost. Without thinking twice, I wrote back to Opal, Dear friend, I accept your invitation. We can fly out today. While I waited for her reply, I made coffee in my French press, which I had bought years ago but rarely used because I was always in a hurry. I poured the coffee into my favorite porcelain cup, inherited from my grandmother, and sat in my favorite chair by the window. For the first time in months, I allowed myself the luxury of enjoying the present moment without worrying about the needs of others. The coffee tasted different when you drank it without guilt. It tasted of freedom, of my own choices, of reclaimed time. I looked out the window and saw my neighbors decorating their houses, preparing for their own Christmas parties. I wondered how many of them had families who truly appreciated them, who treated them as people and not as service providers. My laptop chimed with a new message. Opal had replied, Alma, what a joy. Yes, we can go today. There's a flight at 6 p.m. I'll pick you up at 4. Finally, you'll have an adventure all for yourself. An adventure for myself. Those words echoed in my heart like heavenly music. When was the last time I had done something just for my own pleasure, without considering the needs or opinions of others? The answer was painful. Never. Since I married at 20, my life had been a series of decisions focused on others. My husband, my children, my grandchildren, my daughter-in-law. I booked the flight with my own savings, feeling a mix of fear and excitement I hadn't experienced since I was a teenager. 8 days in Cape May by the sea, sleeping in, eating what I wanted, reading the books I had put off, taking leisurely walks on the beach. 8 days just for Alma Reed, not for Curtis's mother or the mother-in-law who cooks well. The phone continued to ring intermittently, but I had disconnected from that toxic reality. I finished my coffee slowly, savoring every sip as if it were the first coffee of my new life. Because in a way, it was. I went back to my room and packed my favorite book, my sunscreen, and that bikini I had bought spontaneously 2 years ago but never dared to wear because I thought I was too old for that sort of thing. Now, I had finally decided it's never too late to live for yourself. As I closed the suitcase, I thought of the shock Curtis and Laura would get when they arrived at my house at 7 p.m. I imagined their faces when they found the empty table without the feast they had taken for granted. I imagined their confusion when they read the message I was about to write. A message that would change the dynamic of our relationship forever. I took an elegant sheet of paper that I had saved for special occasions and began to compose the most important message of my adult life. A message that would take less than 5 minutes to write, but for which I had needed 70 years to find the courage to express. With a trembling pen in my hand, not from nervousness, but from the adrenaline of freedom, I began to write the letter that would change everything. Every word I put on paper was a piece of my soul that, after years of silence, finally found a voice. Dear family, I wrote in my best handwriting, if you arrive tonight expecting the dinner you demanded via text, you will only find this letter.
I am not your housekeeper. I am not your Personalchef.
I am not an ATM that dispenses unlimited money and favors. I am Alma Reed, a 70-year-old woman who is tired of begging for respect in her own home. I paused to wipe away the tears that fell onto the paper. They were not tears of sadness, but of a relief so deep it was physically palpable. I continued writing, for 15 years, I have emptied my bank account, my energy, and my dignity to please you. I have spent over $35,000 of my savings on your emergencies, whims, and demands. I have worked like a slave in my own kitchen, while you have behaved like hotel guests who don't pay their bill.
The phone rang again.
This time, I saw it was Laura. Her contact picture showed that perfect smile I had deciphered as pure manipulation. I let it ring while I continued writing my Declaration of Independence. Today, I received a list of 8 dishes I was supposed to prepare, as if it were a restaurant menu. A list that would have cost me over $700 and 12 hours of strenuous physical labor. A list that was sent without asking if I could, if I wanted to, or if I had other plans for my Christmas. Because it turns out, I too have the right to have my own plans. I remembered the exact words of Laura's list and felt that sting of indignation again. The casual way she had assumed I would be available, the way she had added her whole family without consulting me, the cold postscript demanding everything be ready by 7 p.m., as if I were a machine programmed to fulfill her wishes. When my husband died 10 years ago, I continued, I promised to dedicate the rest of my life to caring for my family. But caring does not mean being abused. Loving does not mean allowing oneself to be disrespected. Being a mother and grandmother does not mean giving up one's own identity and well-being. At that moment, I heard the doorbell. I looked out the window and saw Opal's car parked outside. My heart raced with an excitement I hadn't felt in decades. It was the excitement of adventure, of the unknown, of choosing my own path for the first time in years.
One moment, Opal. I callet to the door. I'll be right out.
I returned to my letter with renewed urgency. Therefore, when you read this message, I will be on a plane heading to Cape May. I will spend Christmas on a beach, reading books I've put off, sleeping in, and remembering who I am when I am not serving others. I will spend my savings on my own happiness for the first time in decades.
The doorbell rang again.
Opal was punctual as always. But I had to finish this letter. I had to close this chapter of my life before I opened the next. On the table, you will find bread and water. That is the only thing I am willing to offer people who have treated me like service staff for 15 years. If you are hungry, the restaurants are open. If you need money to pay for dinner, work for it, just as I have my whole life. If you need someone to cook for you, hire a caterer. I signed the letter with my full name. Alma Reed. Not your employee, not your ATM, but a woman who has reclaimed her dignity. I placed the letter in the center of my dining table, next to a loaf of whole wheat bread and a pitcher of water. The image was deliberately stark, a brutal contrast to the expectations they had held for years. Instead of the expected restaurant feast, they would see the naked reality of their selfishness. I took my suitcase and opened the door for Opal. My friend hugged me with a radiant smile. Alma, you look beautiful. That dress is fabulous on you. It was the first time in months someone had complimented me without asking for a favor in return. Opal, you don't know what this trip means to me, I said, carrying my suitcase to her car. I feel like I'm escaping a prison I built myself. Dearest, she replied as she started the engine, sometimes we have to get away to see clearly how close we were to losing ourselves.
Keep my will give you your soul back.
As we drove away from my house, I looked in the rearview mirror. It was the same house where I had raised Curtis, where I had built family memories, where I had aged while caring for others. But it was also the house where I had lost my identity, where I had allowed myself to become a shadow of who I really was. In a few hours, Curtis and Laura would arrive with their 18 hungry guests. They would find my empty table, my devastating letter, and the absence of the woman they had taken for granted for too long. Imagining their faces filled me with a satisfaction I had never thought possible. You know what the most liberating thing about all this is? I told Opal as she drove to the airport. That for the first time in years, someone else has to solve their own problems. For the first time in years, I won't be there to clean up their messes, finance their whims, or sacrifice my well-being for theirs. Opal smiled. And the best part is, you're just beginning to discover who you are when no one needs you for anything. You're going to meet the Alma who exists beyond her usefulness to others. Her words moved me to tears. The Alma who exists beyond her usefulness to others. A woman who, for 70 years, had defined her worth by what she could do for others. Finally, she would explore who she was when no one demanded anything from her. The airport looked beautiful from a distance, full of Christmas lights and promises of new horizons. For the first time in decades, I too had a right to those promises. The airport was full of families meeting for Christmas, hugging with tears of joy, carrying gifts in shiny paper. As I walked to the gate with my small suitcase, I felt like a stranger observing a world from which I had been absent for years. A world where people valued each other, where family gatherings were a reason for genuine celebration, not for disguised exploitation. Opal and I sat in the waiting area, and for the first time in years, I could watch the families without the knot in my stomach that the thought of my own dysfunctional family dynamic gave me. I saw an elderly grandmother being lovingly helped by her grandchildren, who carried her bags and made sure she was comfortable. I saw a young mother receiving flowers from her teenage son, who hugged her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "Look," I pointed out to Opal, watching a family where everyone was helping to carry the luggage. When was the last time Curtis helped me with anything without me having to ask? When was the last time he asked if I needed anything? If I was tired, if I wanted to rest? Opal followed my gaze and nodded understandingly. "Alma, you raised a man who learned that women are there to serve him. And Laura found in you the perfect mother-in-law to continue that pattern. They won't change until you change the rules of the game." Her words hit me with the force of truth. I had been complicit in my own exploitation. I had taught my son that a mother's love was measured in favors granted and money lent. I had allowed Laura to see me as an unlimited resource instead of a person with her own needs. My phone began to vibrate persistently. It was 5 p.m. Curtis and Laura were surely getting ready to drive to my house, full of anticipation for the feast they expected. I looked at the screen and saw 17 missed calls and 32 unread messages. The desperation had begun. I opened the latest messages. "Curtis, Mom, please answer, we're worried." "Laura, mother-in-law, is everything okay? Do you need help with dinner?" And then, as the minutes passed without a reply, the tone changed. "Curtis, Mom, we don't understand why you're not answering." "Laura, mother-in-law, we're on our way. We hope everything is ready." Opal noticed my expression and gently tapped my arm. "Do you want to tell me what it says?" "They're starting to realize something is wrong," I replied, feeling a mixture of nervousness and satisfaction. For the first time in 15 years, I'm not available when they need me. For the first time in decades, they have to face the consequences of taking someone for granted. The announcement for our flight echoed over the airport speakers. "Flight 447 to Cape May, now boarding at Gate 12. My heart raced. It wasn't just a flight, it was my escape to a version of myself that had been dormant for too long. As we walked to the gate, I remembered the last time I had flown. It was 5 years ago, when I visited my sister Leona in Boston. It had only lasted 3 days because Curtis had called, saying Laura had an emergency, and I needed to come back urgently to look after the kids. It turned out the emergency was that she wanted to go shopping with her friends and had no one to watch the little ones. I cut my vacation short, spent $200 to change my flight ticket, and rushed back to look after my grandchildren while Laura bought a $1,000 handbag. That evening, while the children slept, I found the receipt in her bag. $1,000, more than half of my monthly pension, spent on a whim while I cancelled my only vacation in years. Never again, I swore to myself as I boarded the plane. Never again will I allow my needs to be less important than the desires of others. Never again will I be the first to sacrifice and the last to be considered. The plane was small but comfortable. Opal had insisted on paying for my upgrade to first class. "This is your Christmas present," she said with a smile. "Your present from a friend who truly loves you, unconditionally, without lists of demands." As the plane took off, I looked out the window at the city lights receding. Somewhere down there, Curtis and Laura would be arriving at my house, opening the door with the key I had given them for emergencies, and finding my empty table. Imagining that moment filled me with a satisfaction I had never thought possible. The phone vibrated one last time before I switched it to airplane mode. It was an audio message from Laura, and this time her voice was not sweet and manipulative. It sounded desperate and angry. "Mother-in-law, I don't know what's going on, but my entire family is already on their way. My mother brought flowers. My brothers bought expensive wine. Everyone is looking forward to the dinner you were supposed to prepare. Please tell me you're not going to disappoint us. Please answer the phone. Please tell me you're not going to disappoint us. Those words echoed in my head like a revelation. For 15 years, the only person who had been constantly disappointed was me. Disappointed by the lack of consideration, by the absence of genuine gratitude, by being treated like an object instead of a human being. I switched the phone to airplane mode and closed my eyes. In 2 hours, I would be in Cape May, waking up to a life where my decisions were my own. A life where no one would send me lists of demands via text. A life where Alma Reed's worth would not be measured by her usefulness to others. The flight attendant offered me champagne. Celebrating something special? She asked with a friendly smile. Yes, I replied, taking the glass with hands that no longer trembled. I'm celebrating my independence. I'm celebrating that at 70, I've finally learned to put myself first. I toasted myself as the plane climbed into the clouds. Below, in my empty house, a letter was waiting to be read by a family that was about to learn a lesson I had taken 70 years to teach. That true love is not shown through lists of demands, but through respect, consideration, and reciprocity. For the first time in decades, Alma Reed's Christmas would be exactly as she wanted it. 3 days later, as I drank my morning coffee on the hotel terrace overlooking the sea in Cape May, my phone began to ring with an intensity one hadn't experienced in years. It had been 3 days of absolute digital silence. 3 days in which Alma Reed had existed only for herself, without responding to external demands, without worrying about the needs of others. The Cape May sunrise painted the sky in colors I had forgotten existed. Golden oranges, delicate pinks, creamy yellows that reflected in the calm waves. For the first time in decades, I had slept until my body wanted to wake up. No alarm clock, no urgency to prepare breakfast for others, no fear of checking messages that might contain new demands. Opal joined me with her own cup of coffee, wearing a straw hat she had bought at the local market. "Good morning, Rebel," she said with a mischievous smile.
Feeling ready to face the reality of the world you left behind.
The phone continued to ring. It was 7 a.m. in Cape May, which meant it was also 7 a.m. back home. Surely Curtis had been sending messages all night, processing what he had found on my table 3 days ago. "I think it's time to read the messages," I told Opal, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension. 3 days should be enough for them to understand that something has changed forever. I opened the messaging app and found a flood of notifications that told the whole story of that catastrophic Christmas Eve. The first messages, sent around 7 p.m. on December 24th, were full of confusion. "Mom, we're here and no one is home.
Where are you? The house is dark.
Are you okay?" Then came the panic messages when they found my letter. Curtis had sent photos of the paper, as if he needed proof that it had really happened. The picture showed my dining table with the bread, the water, and my neatly folded letter in the middle, surrounded by the fine china they had expected to find full of delicacies. "Mom, you can't be serious. Laura's whole family is here. The kids are hungry. Please tell me where you are." The desperate tone of his messages revealed something I had never considered. For the first time in 15 years, Curtis had to face the consequences of his expectations without his mother solving the problem. Laura had also written, and her emotional progression through the messages was fascinating to watch. She began with her usual tone of false concern. "Mother-in-law, we hope you're okay. We're worried not to find you." But as the hours passed without a reply, her true personality emerged. "This is very irresponsible. My entire family came expecting the dinner you promised." Promised? That word particularly stood out. I had never promised anything. They had sent a list of demands and automatically assumed I would fulfill them. The difference was glaring, but it perfectly showed how they had seen me all these years, as a contracted service that couldn't refuse orders. I read on. The messages from the evening of the 24th showed a sequence of emotions ranging from confusion to anger. "Laura's parents spent money on flowers and wine to accompany your dinner. The kids are crying because we told them Grandma had prepared something special. We had to order pizza for 18 people. We spent $220 on food we didn't want. $220 for pizza, less than a third of what it would have cost me to prepare their demanded feast. And they considered it a financial tragedy. The irony was so perfect that I couldn't help but smile. Opal, who was reading over my shoulder, laughed out loud. Seriously? They're upset about $220 after you spent thousands on them? The lack of self-awareness is impressive. The messages from December 25th showed a change in strategy. They had moved from confusion and anger to emotional manipulation.
Mom, the grandkids miss you.
They're asking why Grandma wasn't here for Christmas. Grace is asking if she did something wrong to make you leave. The whole family is worried. You've never done anything like this. Grace, my 12-year-old granddaughter, the only person in this whole family who treated me as a person and not a service. She was the only one who asked how I was doing. The only one who hugged me without asking for anything in return. The only one who seemed to truly enjoy my company, beyond what I could cook for her. For the first time since making this decision, I felt a pang of guilt, but I immediately remembered something crucial. Grace was also the only person who would benefit from me respecting myself. She needed an example of a woman who set boundaries, who valued her own dignity, who didn't let herself be treated like an emotional doormat. The messages from the 26th revealed that they had begun to research my whereabouts. Mom, I've called all the hospitals.
Nobody knows anything about you.
We went to Aunt Leona's house. She says she doesn't know where you are, but she supports whatever decision you made. Leona, my older sister, had always been more direct than me. Surely she had told them some unpleasant truths they needed to hear. Finally, I got to the latest messages, sent that very morning. The tone had completely changed. There was no more anger or manipulation. There was something I had never seen before in my son's messages. Humility. Mom, I've been thinking about everything you wrote in your letter. Laura and I have talked. Maybe we didn't realize how much we relied on you.
Maybe we weren't fair to you.
It was the first message in 15 years in which Curtis acknowledged there was a problem in our relationship. But the message that touched me the most was the last one, sent just an hour before. Mom, I don't know where you are, but I hope you're okay. I hope you're doing something that makes you happy. For the first time in my adult life, I realize I never asked you what you want.
When you come back, if you want to come back, I want to start over.
I want to get to know my mom, not just the woman who solves our problems. I closed the phone and looked at the sea. The waves followed their eternal rhythm, unimpressed by human dramas, reminding me that life goes on regardless of our family conflicts. A seagull landed near my table and pecked at crumbs from my breakfast, without asking for permission, simply taking what it needed. You know what the best part of all this is? I said to Opal. That for the first time in 15 years, my son sees me as an individual. For the first time, he's questioning how he treated me. And most importantly, for the first time, I'm not there to give him the easy answers. A week after my return from Cape May, I was sitting in my garden drinking chamomile tea when I heard the doorbell. It was a Sunday afternoon, and for the first time in years, I had no plans that involved cooking for others or solving someone else's problems. I had spent the morning reading a novel I had bought at the airport in Cape May, a story about a woman who rediscovers her identity after decades of living for others. Through the peephole, I saw Curtis standing at my door, but he was not accompanied by Laura or the children. He was holding flowers in one hand and what looked like a box of chocolates in the other. For the first time in years, my son had come to visit me without bringing a list of problems to solve or favors to ask. I opened the door slowly. Curtis looked different. There was something in his posture, in his expression, that I had never seen before. He seemed smaller, more humble, like a child who had been punished and finally understood why. "Hello, Mom," he said softly. "Can I come in?" I invited him to sit in the living room. The same room where I had received his visits for years, which invariably ended with requests for money or services. This time, however, he sat nervously on the edge of the sofa, as if it were the first time he was visiting a stranger's house. "Mom," he began, fidgeting with the flowers he had brought, "the whole week you were gone, I thought about your letter, about everything you wrote, and I realized something terrible. I don't remember the last time I asked you how you were doing or if you needed anything. His words surprised me with their honesty. In the 30-something years I had been his mother, this was the first time Curtis had openly acknowledged that there was something fundamentally unbalanced in our relationship. Tell me about your trip, he continued. I want to know what you did, how you felt, what you thought. I want to get to know my mom as a person, not just as the woman who is always available when I need her. I told him about Cape May, about the sunrises I had watched in peace, about the books I had read on the beach, about the conversations I had with Opal and other travelers we had met. I told him about the liberation I had felt when I made decisions based solely on my own desires, about the peace of not having to worry about the needs of others. Mom, he interrupted me once, weren't you happy before? Weren't you happy cooking for us, lending us money, solving our problems?
The question hit ML with unexpected force.
No one had asked me about my happiness in decades. No, my son, I answered with an honesty that surprised even me. I was not happy. I felt useful. I felt needed, but I was not happy. I had become a version of myself that only existed in relation to others. Curtis nodded slowly. Laura and I have been going to couples therapy since you came back. The therapist helped us understand how we treated you. She told us something we had never considered. A relationship where only one person gives and the other takes is not love, it's exploitation. Those words moved me to tears. For the first time in years, someone from my family had used the right word to describe what I had experienced.
Exploitation.
It wasn't poorly expressed love, it wasn't a close-knit family, it wasn't tradition, it was pure and simple exploitation. Mom, I want to ask for your forgiveness, Curtis continued, and for the first time in the conversation, his eyes filled with tears. Forgiveness for treating you like our personal bank. Forgiveness for assuming you would always be available to solve our problems. Forgiveness for not appreciating your time, your money, your energy. Forgiveness for teaching our children that grandmothers are treated this way. His apologies sounded sincere, but I had learned to be wary of pretty words. Curtis, I appreciate your apology, but I need you to understand that things will be different from now on. I will not be the same woman who emptied her bank account every time you had a whim. We understand, he replied quickly. In fact, Laura and I calculated all the money you've lent us over the last 5 years. It's $32,000, Mom. $32,000 that we never paid back because we assumed it was your duty to help us. The precision of the number impressed me. It meant they had actually taken the trouble to remember every loan, every financial favor, every time they had reached into my wallet. We've spoken with a financial advisor, he continued. We are going to sell the compact car we bought with your money and give you half immediately. The rest we will pay you in monthly installments of $500 for the next 2 years. This is non-negotiable, Mom.
This is what we owe you.
He took an envelope from his jacket and handed it to me. Inside were $16,000 in cash. This is half of our debt to you, he said. You will receive the other half on time every month.
I promise you.
For the first time in years, I felt that my son was treating me as a person who deserved respect and consideration. But I also knew that words are easy and that true change is proven through sustained actions over time. Is there something else? Curtis said, taking out his phone.
Grace wants to talk to you.
She was very worried, but she's also very proud of you. She says she finally understood what it means to be a strong woman. My granddaughter appeared on the phone screen with a radiant smile. Grandma, Dad told me you traveled to Cape May all by yourself. That's incredible. When I grow up, I want to be as brave as you. Her words filled me with deep satisfaction. Grace had understood the most important lesson, that a woman has the right to set boundaries, to value herself, to demand respect. My decision had not only saved my own dignity but had also taught my granddaughter that she did not have to settle for less than she deserved. I love you, Grandma, Grace continued, and Dad said we'll start visiting you just to be with you, without asking for anything. Would you like it if I came over next Saturday and we bake cookies together? I'll bring the ingredients. After we hung up, Curtis and I were silent for a few minutes. There was so much to process, so much to repair, so much to rebuild from the ground up. But for the first time in years, I felt hope. Not the blind hope that things would go back to how they were, but the solid hope that they could be better. "Mom," Curtis said before he left, "I know it will take time for you to believe this change is real. I know we've promised things before and not followed through, but I want you to know that your letter changed my life." It made me realize that I had lost my mom somewhere along the way and replaced her with a free housekeeper. After he left, I sat in my garden until it got dark. In my hands, I held $16,000, more money than I had seen together in years. But more important than the money was the feeling that, at 70, I had finally learned the most important lesson of my life, that teaching others how to treat us is the most important responsibility we have to ourselves. That evening, as I prepared my favorite meal just for myself, I thought about the journey that had begun with a cruel list of Christmas demands. It had ended with something much more valuable, the respect of my family and, more importantly, my own self-respect. I looked to the future and, for the first time in decades, saw possibilities that belonged only to me. Trips I wanted to take, books I wanted to read, friendships I wanted to cultivate, dreams I had postponed for too long. Alma Reed had spent 70 years being useful to others. The years she had left, she would dedicate to being happy for herself. And that, I decided, as I toasted myself with a glass of wine, was the best investment I had made in my entire life. It's not revenge, it's liberation. And it's never too late to start living for yourself. 6 months have passed since that Christmas that changed my life forever. As I write these lines, I am sitting in my new apartment by the sea on the Jersey Shore, a place I bought with part of the money Curtis gave me back and with my own savings, which I finally allowed myself to use for my happiness. Every morning, I wake up without an alarm clock, without the fear of checking messages that might contain new demands, without the pressure of being useful to someone else before being good to myself. The sound of the waves has replaced the persistent ringing of my phone, and the aroma of the coffee I prepare just for me has replaced the stress of cooking feasts for people who took my efforts for granted. I won't lie and say the change was easy. In the first few weeks after that Christmas, there were moments when I doubted my decision. Years of living for others cannot be erased overnight. There were moments when my maternal instinct urged me to go back, to apologize, to be the old Alma again. But every time I felt that temptation, I remembered the humiliation of that text message list. I remembered the $32,000 given away without question. I remembered the tears of frustration I had shed in silence for years. The relationship with Curtis and Laura has improved, but on completely new foundations. Curtis kept his word. Every month, he punctually transfers $500 to my account, and each transfer is accompanied by a message that simply says, "With love and respect, Mom." They have never missed a payment and never tried to negotiate a reduction or postponement. Laura, in turn, surprised me 3 months ago. She appeared at my door with a handwritten letter, something I would have never thought possible. In that letter, she asked for my forgiveness for having seen me as a resource instead of a person. She told me that the therapist had asked her how she would feel if her own children treated her the way she had treated me. That question, she wrote, had kept her awake for weeks. "Mother-in-law," the letter read, "I want you to know that I have taught my children to save a portion of their allowance to buy you birthday and Christmas presents. I want them to learn that love is shown through consideration and reciprocity, not through demands. I want them to grow up knowing that grandmothers are to be loved and respected, not exploited." The letter moved me to tears. Not just because it represented a real change in Laura, but because it meant my grandchildren were learning a lesson that could protect them from perpetuating toxic patterns in their own future relationships. Grace has been my greatest joy in this whole process. Every Saturday afternoon, we have a video call where she tells me about her studies, her dreams, her worries. For the first time in my life as a grandmother, these conversations do not involve requests for money, favors, or problem solving. They are genuine conversations between two women who respect each other. A month ago, she told me something I will never forget. "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be as independent as you. I want people to love me for who I am, not for what I can do for them." Last Christmas was completely different. Instead of cooking for 18 people, Opal and I organized an intimate dinner for 8 widowed friends like us. Each brought a dish, each contributed something. Each was valued for her company, not for her utility. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. We toasted our newfound freedom, and for the first time in decades, I too was a guest instead of the enslaved hostess. Curtis and his family invited me to spend Christmas Eve with them, but I set my own terms. I would arrive after dinner, stay for only 2 hours, and do no housework. They accepted without protest. When I arrived, I found the table set with homemade food, nothing elaborate, but made with their own effort. Laura had cooked, Curtis had set the table, and the children had prepared simple desserts with their own hands. It was beautiful to see my family functioning without depending on me for every detail. It was beautiful to be treated as a special guest instead of service staff. And it was even more beautiful to go home at 10 p.m., knowing that my value at that celebration did not depend on my ability to solve others' problems. Economically, my life has completely changed. Without the constant expenses for family emergencies, without the expensive dinners I financed monthly, without the loans that were never repaid, I was able to build a real nest egg for my old age. The money Curtis is paying me back, I have invested in a retirement plan that will give me financial security for the rest of my life. But the most profound change was not financial, but emotional. I have rediscovered parts of my personality that I had buried for decades. I am reading passionately again. I have taken painting classes. I have learned to use travel apps to plan my own adventures. Next month, I am traveling to Spain alone. The trip I had so often postponed for family emergencies that were never real emergencies. I have learned that the guilt I felt when I prioritized my own wishes was not real guilt, but a social programming that had taught me that women, especially mothers and grandmothers, exist solely to serve others. Unlearning that programming has been the hardest and most liberating work of my life. Now I understand that what I did that Christmas was not cruel. It was necessary. It was not selfish. It was self-preservation. It was not a tantrum. It was a personal revolution that came 70 years too late, but in time to save the years I have left. To the women who are reading this and recognize themselves in my story, I want to say something. It is never too late to set boundaries. It is never too late to demand respect. It is never too late to rediscover yourself beyond your usefulness to others. The fear of disappointing others must not be stronger than the commitment not to disappoint yourself. Today, as the sun sets over the Atlantic coast, I toast to the woman I was and to the woman I am now. I toast to every tear that led me to this clarity, to every dollar I have recovered, to every boundary I have set. I toast to the women who dare to say no more when life reduces them to free service staff. My name is Alma Reed. I am 70 years old and, after a lifetime of living for others, I am finally living for myself. This is my victory, this is my freedom, and this is the most valuable legacy I can leave my granddaughter, the certainty that a woman always has the right to demand respect, regardless of her age, regardless of how long she has allowed the opposite. Life is too precious to be spent on your knees. I stood up at 70. You can stand up at any age. If you liked my story, you can support me by sending me a super thanks so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I am always curious to know what you think, and please also write where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many more stories waiting for you. With warm regards, until next time. M.